Have you ever wondered what would happen if the world's largest economy suddenly faced a financial problem so massive that it could impact every American household? According to Ray Dalio, that possibility may be much closer than most people realize. He believes America has created a debt bubble unlike anything we've seen before, and the warning signs are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. While most people are focused on inflation, elections, and daily headlines, a much bigger issue may be developing beneath the surface. The United States continues to borrow trillions of dollars. Interest payments are rising rapidly, and the financial system is becoming more dependent on debt than ever before. Dalio's warning is simple but alarming. America's debt bubble may be approaching a breaking point, and if it bursts, the consequences could affect savings, investments, retirement accounts, home values, and the overall economy. Stay with us until the end, because what you're about to hear could completely change how you view the future of America's financial system. For decades, the United States enjoyed a unique advantage in the global economy. The U.S. dollar became the world's reserve currency. Investors around the world trusted American markets, and the government could borrow enormous amounts of money at relatively low costs. This system created tremendous economic growth and allowed America to become the dominant financial power on earth. However, according to Ray Dalio, that success also created a dangerous habit. Instead of living within its means, the government increasingly relied on borrowing. Year after year, spending exceeded tax revenue, forcing Washington to issue more debt. At first, the problem seemed manageable because interest rates were low and investors remained confident. But over time, the debt continued growing, eventually reaching levels that would have seemed impossible just a few decades ago. Ray Dalio often explains that debt is not automatically bad. In fact, debt can help economies grow when used responsibly. Businesses borrow money to expand operations, families borrow to purchase homes, and governments borrow to invest in infrastructure and future growth. Problems begin when debt grows faster than income. When that happens, borrowers become increasingly dependent on new debt just to maintain their existing obligations. Dalio believes this is exactly what is happening in America today. The government is now borrowing not only to fund new spending but also to help manage existing financial commitments. As debt increases, interest payments increase. As interest payments increase, even more borrowing becomes necessary. Eventually, this cycle starts feeding itself. One of the biggest concerns Dalio has involves the sheer size of America's debt burden. Every year, the government must pay enormous amounts of money simply to cover interest costs. These payments do not build roads, improve schools, strengthen healthcare systems, or create economic growth. Instead, they are used to service debt that already exists. As interest rates remain elevated, these costs continue rising. This creates a situation where a larger portion of government revenue is consumed by past borrowing. According to Dalio, this trend becomes increasingly dangerous because it limits future flexibility. Governments facing large interest costs have fewer options available when economic challenges emerge. Throughout history, Dalio has observed the same pattern repeated again and again. Powerful nations experience periods of prosperity. Borrowing increases, debt accumulates, and eventually financial pressure begins to build. The process often unfolds slowly. During the early stages, most people fail to notice the risks because the economy continues functioning normally. Markets may rise, unemployment may remain low, and confidence stays strong. However, beneath the surface, vulnerabilities continue growing. Then eventually, a triggering event exposes weaknesses that have been developing for years. This is why Dalio studies history so carefully. He believes understanding past debt cycles can help identify risks before they become full-scale crises. A major factor driving Dalio's concern is the bond market. Most people focus on stocks, But bonds play a critical role in determining the health of the financial system. When the government needs money, it issues treasury bonds. Investors purchase these bonds because they expect repayment with interest. As long as confidence remains high, the government can continue borrowing relatively easily. However, if investors begin questioning whether debt levels are sustainable, they may demand higher interest rates. Higher rates increase borrowing costs. Higher borrowing costs increase deficits. Larger deficits require additional borrowing. The cycle intensifies, creating more pressure on the system. Dalio believes this dynamic represents one of the greatest long-term risks facing America. Inflation adds another layer of complexity. When governments face growing debt burdens, they sometimes rely on monetary policies that increase the money supply. While this can provide temporary relief, it often reduces the purchasing power of currency. Americans have already experienced how inflation affects daily life. Food costs, housing expenses, healthcare bills, insurance premiums, and countless other necessities have become more expensive. Even when inflation slows, prices often remain elevated. This means families continue feeling financial pressure long after inflation headlines disappear. Dalio warns that inflation acts like a hidden tax because it quietly reduces the value of savings and income. The average American may wonder why government debt matters so much. After all, many people don't buy treasury bonds or follow financial markets closely. The answer is that debt affects nearly every part of the economy. Rising debt can contribute to higher taxes in the future. It can increase borrowing costs for businesses and consumers. It can weaken economic growth and reduce financial opportunities. It can also create instability in financial markets, affecting retirement accounts and investment portfolios. According to Dalio, debt eventually impacts everyone, whether they realize it or not. Another reason Dalio is concerned involves America's position in the global economy. For many years, the dollar's reserve currency status provided enormous advantages. Countries around the world held dollars and U.S. debt because they trusted America's financial system. This demand helped support government borrowing. However, Dalio notes that reserve currencies do not remain dominant forever. History shows that economic leadership changes over time. While the dollar remains the world's leading currency today, increasing debt levels and geopolitical tensions could gradually weaken confidence over the long term. Even small shifts in global demand for U.S. debt could have significant consequences. Political division also plays an important role in Dalio's analysis. Throughout history, major debt crises often coincide with rising social and political tensions. When living costs increase and economic opportunities become less certain, frustration grows. Governments find it more difficult to reach agreements on long-term solutions. Important reforms get delayed. Problems that require immediate attention remain unresolved. Dalio believes this environment makes financial challenges more difficult to address because effective solutions often require cooperation and compromise. Despite these concerns, Dalio does not believe panic is the answer. His goal is not to frighten people but to encourage awareness. Economic cycles are a normal part of history. Financial challenges can be managed when they are recognized early. Individuals can strengthen their own financial position by reducing unnecessary debt, building emergency savings, diversifying investments, and focusing on long-term planning. Preparation provides flexibility, and flexibility becomes extremely valuable during periods of uncertainty. The reason Ray Dalio's warnings attract so much attention is because they are based on decades of research and experience. He has studied countless historical debt cycles and observed how financial systems behave under pressure. While nobody can predict the future with certainty, his analysis suggests that America's debt trajectory deserves serious attention. The risks may not result in an immediate crisis tomorrow, but they are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Rising debt, higher interest costs, inflation pressures, political division, and global economic shifts are all occurring at the same time. As Dalio sees it, the debt bubble isn't simply a future problem. It is a challenge that is already shaping economic decisions today. Every year the debt grows larger. Every year interest costs increase. Every year policymakers face more difficult choices. The question is no longer whether debt matters. The question is how much time remains before the system reaches a point where adjustments become unavoidable. History shows that debt bubbles often appear manageable until suddenly they aren't. That's why Dalio believes Americans should pay attention now rather than later. America remains one of the strongest economies in the world, with incredible innovation, talented workers, and powerful institutions. Those strengths should not be underestimated. However, even strong economies must respect financial realities. Debt cannot grow faster than income forever. Interest costs cannot rise indefinitely without consequences. Confidence cannot be taken for granted. According to Ray Dalio, America's debt bubble may be approaching a critical stage, and the decisions made in the coming years could determine the country's financial future for decades to come. The warning signs are visible. The risks are real. And if Dalio is correct, what happens next may surprise millions of Americans.